Today I would like to show you how to solve an equation in one variable using a graphing calculator. That's called solving it graphically. So what we're going to do is we have to rethink what 5x minus 5 equals 2x plus 1 could be rewritten as. So what I'd like to do first is let 5x minus 5 equal y. So what we've dealt with here is the left-hand side of this equation. But if this equals y, then this side, the 2x plus 1, also has to equal y. So we're going to also let 2x plus 1 equal y. So now what we have is two equations where y equals something. Y equals one thing, y equals another thing. They both equal each other since they both equal y. Now since this is true, there's a little trick that we can do with our graphing calculator that's going to save you the work of solving it by adding and subtracting from both sides. Some of you may like it better, some of you may not, but this is how this works on the graphing calculator. Now if you'll recall, we can set y equals equations up by going into the y equals button on your calculator. And I'm just going to clear out what's already there. And we're going to go up here and we're going to put in 5x minus 5. And we're going to put in 2x plus 1. So now we have two different y equations. They both are equaling the same number in the final solution. Now this graph is going to be very different than this graph. You know that from graphing equations. They have different y-intercepts. But this is going to allow us to put both of these graphs on the same window in the same graph. So if you'll remember from before, we do that by hitting zoom, and then we go down to option 6, or you can just push the number 6, zoom 6, push enter, and we see that we have two lines that cross each other. That's what the graph of this one and the graph of this one show up to be this graph. Now where the two graphs, where the two lines cross each other, where they intersect, is actually going to be where the two y's have the same value. And if the two y's are equal, that means that the two x's also are going to be equal. The ordered pair, where they match, where they cross, is going to be the same ordered pair. So if we can figure out what that x value is, then that's the solution to the problem. The calculator has a special way of doing that. This button right here says trace. Right above the trace in yellow you see the word calc. So what we're going to do is we're going to calculate something from the graph. So to do that you push the second button, and then you push the trace button, which puts you into the calculate screen. We want to calculate the intersection of those two lines. So we're going to go down to option 5. You're going to hit enter. You're going to see something a little strange. It's going to say first curve. On your graphing calculator, they refer to any graphed line or actual curve as a curve. So the first curve has a blinking cursor on it. We have to hit enter. That's one enter. It now says second curve. And the blinking cursor's on that one, so we hit enter once again. And then it says guess. It made a guess for you, so you don't have to really make a guess. All you have to do is hit enter. And when you do that, it calculates the intersection. The intersection 2, 5. The actual answer to the equation is what comes up in the x section. Y is equaling 5 But in order for those two y's to be the same number, x had to be 2. So we know that x equals 2 from our graphing calculator example. Now that's the solution without going through all of the process of adding and subtracting to both sides. However, we can still check it with algebra to make sure that that x equals 2 is correct. So we can plug in 5 times 2 minus 5, and we want to see if that equals 2 times 2 plus 1. 5 times 2 is 10. 10 minus 5 is 5. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 plus 1 is 5. So yes, they do equal each other. So x equals 2 is our solution, solving it graphically using the graphing calculator. Once again, once you go through that process, second, calc, option 5, enter, 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 you get x equals 2, and that's your solution. Now what we need to do is look at an equation where maybe the intersection doesn't happen in the window. And the last lesson on calculator use, we talked about changing the window, so we need to be able to do that as well. Alright, at this point we need to have another example. We're going to pick one this time that doesn't show up completely in the graphing window when we first start, but we want to solve it graphically. So we want to do the exact same thing that we did before in order to solve the other one. We're going to let them each equal y. So in the calculator, that means that y equals the left side of the equation, which is 4x minus 9. And y also equals the right hand side of the equation, which is 5x plus 7. So 4x minus 9 and 5x plus 7, and we need to solve this graphically. So we know that we always start a graph by choosing the zoom 6 option, hitting enter. Now unfortunately this graph, the place where the two lines cross doesn't show up, but we can see that it's a little closer together here than here. So it must be down here in the bottom somewhere. So we need to have more space in the negative y direction. So let's go to our window and see if we can adjust this so that the window will look better. So we need a lot more down in the y direction. So let's just try negative 30. And we're going to push the graph button. Remember, if you hit zoom 6 now, it's going to put it back to standard. But we've taken it way down in the y direction. So let's see what that looks like. Alright, that's some better. We're getting closer to an intersection. But it still looks like we need more down in the negative y direction. It also looks like we could use a little bit further in the negative x direction. So let's try that again in the window. Let's go down further. Let's try 50. And we need some more negative in the x direction. So let's try negative 15. And once again, it's a little bit of trial and error here so that you can get this window set the way it needs to be. We'll push the graph button. And we are almost there. We need a little bit more in our y direction, a little bit more in our x direction. It looks like it's crossing somewhere down around here. So we'll go back to our window. Let's try negative 20. And the x, we need some more in the y direction. Let's try 60. And we'll push graph. Almost, but not quite. A little bit more in the y direction. About 80. Okay, finally, looks like it's crossing right here. As soon as you have the place where the two lines cross, then you can calculate the intersection. If you try to calculate the intersection but the intersection isn't showing, it'll give you an error message. So it's really important to get your window right first. So we're going to do second, calc, intersect, enter, enter on the first curve, enter on the second curve, and enter on the guess. And you see that we have the intersection is at -16, -73. You ignore the y, the x is your actual answer. So the answer to this question is x equals -16. Now once again, we can check that answer to make sure that it's actually right. And you can check that with your plugging in and seeing what you get. We're going to check 4 times -16 minus 9. We want to see, does that equal 5 times -16 plus 7? Okay, 4 times -16 is -64. -64 minus 9 is -73. 5 times -16 is -80. And -80 plus 7 is -73. They do equal each other. They check out. So x equals -16 is your actual answer to this problem. That's how you solve it graphically. Now some of you might say it would have been just easier to just go ahead and solve the equation by adding and subtracting both sides, and sometimes that's true. But it is a skill. Your calculator is a tool. So what you're doing now is you're learning all the different ways to use it. So solving an equation graphically.